Thank you, Kath.
Thank
And
you,
over to
Kath.
Pete.
So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first of the 8 Rock the Recovery webinar series. We're delighted to see you all attending this morning virtually. My name is Pete Evans. I'm the owner of a company called Ventus and recently set up a joint venture with SalesStar UK, and I'm delighted to that this morning and their evening we're joined by Paul O'Donoghue, who's the CEO of SalesStar. Paul, would you like to say a few words?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for zooming in on this call. Looking forward to sharing some real insights in terms of what we've learned along the way in terms of selling in tough economic conditions. So I'm the founder of SalesStar. I've started SalesStar 16 years ago, being through a major recession in the past, which was the GFC. And we've done a bunch of research many years ago that served us really well, also served our clients in selling in a recession. And now we see ourselves in another crisis of sorts, which is obviously COVID-19. And it's probably going to follow inevitably by a recession. So we want to pass on strategies and tools to help you really rock the recovery. So stand by.
Yeah, and we're also joined by Alex Chan, who's the head of, he's the Global Head of Learning and Development for SalesStar. So Alex, you're going to be leading the webinar. Would you like to say a few words to our audience this morning?
Indeed. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning, or it's evening in my local time anyway. But look, it's really good to see everybody joining us. Pete's doing a fantastic job with international research and bringing thought leaders together from around the world. We're really happy to chat with you this morning and share some ideas on how you can rock the recovery. We don't want to be scaremongering. We don't want to be doom and gloom, but we do want you to be ready for whatever is coming. So the insights that we're going to be sharing with you both this morning and in the following weeks, we're absolutely sure you'll find of value. Thank you very much for joining us. And if you stay on for the hour, we promise you'll walk away with some good takeaways. Over to you, Pete.
Yeah, and we're also joined by Kath. Kath is part of our sales team, and Kath is handling the tech stack for us this morning. Kath, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure thing, Pete. Good morning, everybody. So my role within SalesStar UK is a sales development leader. So I support sales leaders to achieve their sales growth targets. If you do have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to me. I'll be posting my contact details shortly. Thank you, Pete. Yeah,
and Kath is ably supported from New Zealand by Lisa. So now I'm going to pass over to Alex, who's going to be leading the webinar. So over to Alex. And if you've got any questions as we go through, please put them in the chat facility, and Kath will pick those up for us.
Yeah. So, Kath, if I could just get you to keep an eye on the chat window there, and if any questions come through, pick some of the juiciest ones and just interrupt at any time. And say, hey, look, we've got a question from Horace or Doris. How does that sound?
Perfect, no problem at all.
Okay, so people, you heard the cue. Let me just help you to navigate your dashboard. Most of you are very familiar with Zoom already, I'm sure, because of lockdown. You had to use it. But if you're not entirely sure how to use it, look on your dashboard there. Your dashboard will come up if you simply move your pointer. All right, and you'll see an icon there, a symbol there that says chat. If you'd like to open that up by clicking on it, and if you've got any questions or even any comments, feel free to enter any questions or comments that you have, and Kath will be the moderator, and time permitting, we'll see if we can get through as many of your comments and particularly your questions as time permits. All right, so let's go and let's rock this recovery. So how are you feeling at the moment, ladies and gentlemen? Is anybody out there feeling a little bit worried? You've just gone through the pandemic, you've gone through the lockdown. Things are starting to open up now in the UK and Britain, and now we're hoping that the economy will recover, but we know that you've got an added complication of Brexit on top of the fact that we're going through the COVID economy, as I call it, as well. How are you finding sales out there? Are you discovering that maybe some deals are stalling? We just talked about lockdown. Are you maybe certain or uncertain about your future? Are sales good? What's your year-on-year looking like? Is it going down? Is it good? Is it about static? What about your prospects? Are they accessible, or you find that they're so busy they're not getting much time for you? And what about your customers? Are they slashing and burning? And if so, are you the victim of that because they're cutting back on costs? Could be a number of things that we're feeling at the moment. So Paul and Kath and Pete, what I'd like to do firstly is I just want to get the feeling, the pulse of the viewers here and see how they feel about this. So Kath, I wonder if you can launch the first poll, please, so we can get the pulse of everybody viewing, see how they feel. And as you can see, the poll is, do you feel like, number one, you're in complete control of sales? Number two, somewhat in control of sales. Number three, losing control of sales. And number four, really worried about sales. So Kath, you've launched the poll. Are the answers starting to come through?
It's starting to come in, yes. So we're looking mostly at somewhat in control of sales is leading at the moment, Alex.
Okay, so what percentage of the viewership have voted so far?
So we're looking at 61% of 63% have voted. So please do vote, everybody, so we know what you're thinking. Okay,
come on, everybody. Give us an opinion here. Tell us how you really feel. Now, remember, you've got the safety of anonymity. So tell us how you really feel. What goes on the webinar stays on the webinar, okay? So we'll give them about another 5 seconds. What's the percentage that's responded now, Kath?
Now up to 73% now.
Okay, we'll give you a 5-second countdown and then we'll close those polls. 5, 4, 3, and could you close those polls, please, Kath, and pull up the results for us? What have we got? Okay, Kath, do you want to go over the results, please?
Sure thing. So first, we have in complete control of sales. We've got 13% of the audience.
Ooh, yep.
Somewhat in control of sales is far out leader at 70%. We do have losing control of sales at 9%, and then another 9% who are really worried about sales, Alex.
Okay, so interesting spread there, but there's one conspicuous unanimous option there that was unanimously picked, and that obviously is somewhat in control of sales. I wonder if I can get some analysis from our panel there. Pete, what's your take on what you can see on that poll in front of you? We're gauging the mood, the pulse of the audience right now. What's your take on that?
I think that confirms what we're hearing from our own clients and the companies we're talking to in our prospect base. I think there are some companies that, you know, they feel they've lost complete control of sales and the sales cycle. But I think there's a nervousness and there's also optimism in the UK marketplace as well. So that means that companies will be somewhat in control of sales. But I think also, you know, what we're seeing with our clients is that they want to get in complete control of sales and they want to know how to do that because they recognize that although there are some threats, there are also some significant opportunities.
You know, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking 70% are somewhat in control, but when you look at there's two others there, losing control and really worried, you know, that adds up to 18%. That's still a lot of the audience, isn't it? Paul, can I get a comment from you on what you see?
You must have been reading my mind there, Alex. I was looking at that myself. You know, it's good to see, hey, on a positive, 13% are really in control of sales. And the chat just before, there's Joe who said he's smashing sales week on week. He's having record weeks, which is pleasing to hear. I'd be interested to know if, you know, what industry they're in. Is it an essential service? What are they doing that's right? You know, share the magic with us, Joe. That'll be great. But
go ahead and type away there, Joe. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, so if you're somewhat in control or losing control or really worried, you're in the right place. Like even if you're in control of sales, there's still room for improvement, you know? So going through this webinar today, we're going to give you some really good strategies to turn up the dials and to keep you in control of sales and to help you rock the recovery.
Okay, thank you for that, panelists, and thank you, Kath. If you could close the poll now that we've got an idea of the mood of the audience, I want to introduce an analogy which we'll be seeing a fair bit of in the future webinars, and that is the analogy of crawling out of a desert. Now, guys, if you found yourself in the middle of the desert, how are you going to emerge on the other side? Now, what I do is I liken this to what I call the COVID economy. This is the COVID desert. This is the economic desert. You've got no water, you've got no food, you've got no shelter. If you're lucky, you might make it to the other side, or if you're unlucky, your business might go under. All right, so those are all the dynamics that we're facing. So you could come out the other side. And our panelists know that there are some people that come out of the other side of recessions and out of the other side of other financial crises where there's nothing left. And when there's nothing left, all the money has gone. They've got no more cash reserves. Their cash runway has run out, to use an accounting term. It could be that they've got no more talent left to take advantage of the recovery because they've had to retrench so heavily. So there could be a bunch of things that go wrong. Could be that they lose a lot of their customers as well. I've got one, I heard one story today of a company that is losing customers because of the fact that their supply chain has been interrupted and so they can't supply. Okay, so there can be a bunch of reasons why we come crawling out of that desert and we've got nothing left. So that looks pretty bleak, but hold your horses. I wonder how many of you have ever seen one of these two versions of a movie called Flight of the Phoenix. There was a 1965 version, and a little bit more recently, there was a 2004 version. What is this about? Well, it's about a plane that crashes in the desert. And the survivors, they realized they had some choices. They could either try to walk out like that poor person on the left, but then a rather clever person on board says to the rest of his crew, look, we've actually got enough from the wreckage and enough from the cargo to build another plane. And so they realized if they did not take affirmative strategic action, that they could wind up like that person on the left, come crawling out if you're lucky. But instead they took affirmative strategic action. They decided to build a plane, and the whole movie, the plot of the script was all about how they developed this piece of technology, this plane, and they built it in the middle of the desert, and how in the end they were able to fly out rather than crawl out. And so that analogy will permeate our webinars moving forward. Are you going to make the choice to either hunker down and hope for the best and just try to crawl out without doing anything in particular? Or are you going to form a strategy to fly out of that desert? Those are choices that face you right now. Okay, and on that note, Paul, I know that you're particularly fond of this Chinese saying there, the word crisis. Now, it's funny, I'm the Asian one, but you're going to teach me a bit of Chinese here. Do you want to just give us a bit of an idea about this word, about crisis in Chinese?
My limited Chinese lessons there, Alex. Anyway, look, here's what I know. I know that the word crisis in Chinese is represented by two characters, and those two characters are danger and opportunity. Now, how do we deal with a crisis as leaders? We have a choice on how we show up, and we have a choice on whether we focus on the danger and we shrink into insignificance, or we focus on opportunity. So what sort of mindset are we going to have when we look at a crisis? Are we too focused on the danger, and that's what shows up? It's your reticular activating system. You become what you believe or you're focused in. Or are there opportunities out there? And I believe we should never waste a good crisis, because there are always opportunities. And we'll explain those opportunities. I'd like to hear from Pete in terms of what the opportunities that he's seen in the UK.
Pete, come on in.
So, Paul, I think you raised some really valuable and really interesting insight there. I think there's definitely in the UK two different mindsets. I think there's a lot of businesses that we're seeing who are focusing just completely on survival. They not only have they had to go into lockdown, but I think the mindset of the people leading the business is in complete lockdown. There's all the talk of more forthcoming lockdowns, targeted lockdowns in certain cities, and the impact that's having on people's mindset and the mindset of business owners and salespeople. And then it's complicated by the fact that we've got the trade deal with Brexit looming towards the end of the year. So there's a lot of doom and gloom around, but I think also there's also lots of opportunity. And we've seen lots of our clients and lots of businesses pivot their offering in the last 3 months. And those businesses are actually focusing on building and taking opportunities. So I think when you head into a recession, there's actually lots of different opportunities that you can take advantage of. I think the one thing that we do know is to take advantage of the opportunity, you've got to get better at selling.
You also mentioned this. Sorry,
Paul. You go ahead, Paul.
You also mentioned there's so many things out of your control, like whether we'll dip into another lockdown, or what's happening with the a recession and so forth. But there's so many things that are in our control, you know, like you said, in terms of your strategy, your process, getting better at selling for one. So anyway, that's what I was about to say. But Alex, over to you, buddy.
Yeah, okay. So when you look at the history of recessions, look at the last GFC from 2008 to 2012, of course, the European debt crisis followed that and sort of started at the same time and then continued afterwards. You can pull together a lot of case studies on companies that actually use the recession or the financial crisis as an opportunity. And in the weeks that follow and the webinars that follow, we'll be able to give you lots of insights into exactly what you can do, starting from this morning. But look, firstly, Paul, I want to introduce this pie chart here. It's, as you can see, it's entitled Default Share or Unfair Share. Now, would it be fair to say that when an economy contracts, you might have the same market share, but the size of the market might actually shrink? So that's a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And that's inevitably what happens when we're in a tough economy. You know, markets contract. So your top line revenue contracts. So as we mentioned before, danger or opportunity, one of the opportunities is to grow your share of the market. So when we focus on growing market share, you know, we need to be better than we've ever had at winning new business and selling in tough economies. But when the market grows again, you will grow with that economy and get an unfair share of your market.
Yeah, and I love that. You know, what, are we going to just hold on to what the market gets by default, or are we going to grab a conspicuous and an unfair share? I love that concept, and I think that the decisions that people make today will govern whether they're going to have that outcome or not. Would you agree?
Look, 100%. Look at all the great companies that have come in different cycles and where they've outgrown their competitors. You know, and a lot of them have decided to double down on marketing, double down on sales in the height of a recession. And that is because they want to grow market share, because they know that when the market grows again, they grow significantly with that and outgrow their competitors.
Thanks, Paul. Pete, you had a comment there?
Yeah, I think this comes back to that it's about the mindset. It's about the mindset of the salespeople, the sales leaders, and the owners of the business. I think we're seeing a lot of businesses who are just going into the default share of the market because their marketplace is shrinking. But I think you have to have the mindset, no, we're going to build and we're going to take our unfair share of the marketplace. And, you know, I think also say that you're open for business.
Indeed, rather than just saying we'll wait till the end of lockdown, which is what some people are in fact saying. Okay, well, look, things are changing, and whenever things change, it could be a disruption or anything like that, then we bring the word adapt into the picture. I mean, we can't just do business as usual. Paul, can I get a comment from you about this importance of not doing BAU, but the importance of adaptation?
Well, I think the picture says everything, Alex. You know, we need to adapt or we're going to be extinct. So, you know, there's so many things that are changing right now. COVID-19 has significantly changed buyer behavior. So therefore, we see a massive shift in the sales landscape. You know, there's been more shifts in sales and more disruption in the last 3 months than there has been in the last 30 years. So, you know, we need to, we need to adapt our sales processes, because if buyer behavior has changed, and we'll dive into that a little bit later on in terms of what's changed, but buyer behavior's changed, then our go-to-market strategy needs to change. So we need to adapt our sales process.
Yeah, and as you say, we'll take a closer look at sales process a little later on in this hour, but I wonder how many of our viewers have actually revised their sales process. Firstly, do they have a sales process? And secondly, if they do have a sales process, have they adapted that process to meet the changing nature of the market there? All right.
That's a good point, Alex. Even if they had a sales process pre-COVID-19 and it was effective, like, they need to have another really good look at it now. Because what was effective 3 months ago may not be relevant right now.
Time to at least review it, isn't it, Paul?
So we've got a question, if you'd like to answer this question.
Go ahead, Kath.
Yeah, sure thing. So it's from Karen. She says that she's taken the opportunity to reposition her business and she's very optimistic about the future. But lots of potential clients are very interested, but are feeling very overwhelmed with managing their current situation at the moment in a changing landscape. As a result, they're reluctant to commit right now. So how would you recommend approaching this?
Okay, we do have answers to that, but I want to put it to the panel. Paul, I wonder if you'd like to have a crack at answering that question.
Yeah, well, we're going to answer that one in several slides later. And really the crux of this is we really need to be phenomenal at consultative selling, because you know what's happening with clients and buyers right now is they're more cautious. They're not going, you know, their budgets have shrunk. They're going to be considered buyers. So we need to give them really good reasons to buy. So using consultative selling process, you're able to really connect with the client, build trust or advisor status, get really clear on the client's goals and needs and aspirations, but furthermore, really understand the challenges that are stopping them getting to where they need to be, and monetize that essentially. So when we can show them the cost of and the gap of where they are now and where they want to be, that generally creates urgency to buy. But fundamentally, we need to be able to sell on value, and we need to demonstrate a return on investment.
The business case, yeah, okay. So Paul, I'm going to add to your comments in just a moment, but Pete, have you got a remark to make on that question?
Yeah, I think I'd just like to reiterate what Paul said. I think you've got to get better at consultative selling. I think when you get better at consultative selling, you qualify the opportunity better, and I think it helps you actually sell the value of your product or service to the person or the company that you're actually selling to. I think everybody appreciates that we are working in a very challenging environment, and people are busy. I think they're overwhelmed. They've got less time. So I think earlier on in your sales process, you've got to start creating the value of your proposition.
Yeah, indeed you do. And so I'm going to make my comment now. Both Pete, both you and Paul both mentioned consultative selling. Here is the why. You told me the what. The what is you've got to get good at consultative selling. Here is the why. The reason why we've got to get good at consultative selling, and this is to answer the question, is because consultative selling creates buyer motivation. All right, now hold your horses. All will be explained, as Paul says, in a few slides' time. So hopefully that answers your question. And if that didn't fully answer your question, we'll definitely answer that in a few slides' time, won't we, team?
Alex,
okay,
we've got a question which Adrian has just asked. It's in the chat. Are we okay just to answer this at this stage as well?
Yeah, go ahead there, Pete.
So Adrian, thanks for asking this question. So Adrian's question is, we're having record sales through May and June, which is great, but thinking there may well be a dip at some point. In the past, we have held open days at our stockist premises to promote the products we sell. Our sales team who are online with us may become frustrated with this. How would you suggest we change our mindset to deal with this? Paul, would you want to give a response to that first?
Sorry, mate, I was just digesting the question still. Just give it to Alex.
Okay. I'm trying to digest that question too. Sorry, Adrian, we'll be right with you. I just want to try to dissect this, all right? So that having a good time, they're afraid of a dip. And he talks about how they used to have open days at the stockist premises to do promos. The team are online at the moment. They're getting frustrated. So Adrian, does that mean they're getting frustrated with the fact that they are not able to go onto the premises to do promotions? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So so Paul, are you able to digest the gist of that?
Look, I'm trying to piece it together, but I think right now you may not be able to get to a premises to sell. You know, I'm not sure how what area in the UK you're in, or whether you're impacted by social distancing or lockdown, or that might reoccur in the future. But I certainly think we need to embrace technology to go to market somewhat differently. And what I've seen a lot of demotivated salespeople recently. We work with a lot of clients who were demotivated, but going through some of the strategies we're going to share over the next 8 weeks has really injected some motivation and some enthusiasm back into the organization that had been desperately lacking. So, just thinking about the new ways we can actually go to market, serve our clients, and reach our targets. So that's what I would consider.
Yeah, but in the meantime, Adrian, while Paul was making that comment, I clicked to the next slide. Actually, this and the following slide as well talks to the tech that Paul refers to. During lockdown, Pete, in New Zealand, we were dealing with a number of clients. One that I was personally dealing with is a group home construction firm. And normally they present to their clients by either having the clients walk into the display home or by going to the client's house and presenting over the dining room table, or having them into the office. Well, during lockdown, of course, none of this was possible. And so I said to them, we've got to teach you how to sell screen to screen. And we were faced with a lot of self-limiting beliefs. Oh, we're talking about mum and dad home builders. They'll never buy over, we can't sell to them over the screen. You know what? We trained them how to sell screen to screen. They didn't get pushback from one customer, not from one. I said to them, well, these are middle-class people who are used to Skyping their kids at university or on their OE to Great Britain, aren't they? And I said, yeah, so they're accustomed to screen already. So why is that a big leap of your imagination to do a presentation screen to screen? And so they thought, well, okay, we'll give it a try. And so they adapted. Remember, the theme is adaptation. They adapted their process, not one pushback. They were able to keep on moving the opportunities through their funnel while everybody else was saying, we'll wait till after lockdown.
Yeah. Alex, I'd like just to share something with you as well. I was talking to one of our clients yesterday who sell global engineering solutions into airports and ports and maritime. And what they were saying is that they've had to get their salespeople to adapt to sell screen to screen. Everything was done face to face. And actually, they said they've exceeded their budget in the last quarter. And they said they've learned so much by the fact that their salespeople have had to adapt behavior.
Wow.
And this is the new way of selling, and how actually using technology and the tech stack we've got available can actually help you shorten your sales cycle, because it's easier to get decision makers all together at once.
Even if they're in different parts of the country or even different parts of the world, you can round them all up thanks to a thing called Zoom, isn't that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now Paul,
thanks to
I
a
know
thing called
sorry,
Zoom
Paul,
and LinkedIn.
Yeah, so we're on LinkedIn. We're on the subject of LinkedIn now. So Paul, I want to bring you into the conversation again. You've got a great experience of an organisation that sold navigation gear for marine, and they depended on face-to-face conventions and trade exhibitions to exhibit their wares. That's a little bit like going into stockist premises, isn't it? To Adrian's question.
Yeah, it is a little bit like that, Alex. If you think we're working with a lot of export companies in New Zealand now. New Zealand's borders are closed, so we can't fly anywhere. There might be the odd flight, but you certainly be struggling to return. So, the company that you've just mentioned, Alex, traditional sales is out the window. So they're so used to flying to all over the world. In particular, they were looking to get into the US Navy. So it means multiple flights to the US, going to trade shows, pressing the flesh, shaking hands, and all that traditional stuff. So they be fair to say they were in a world of stress when they came to us 3 months ago, and it was in the height of lockdown, and their pipeline was starting to be depleted. So even the leadership team were sort of had their heads down, and we're feeling a bit sorry for themselves, to be fair. So the strategy that we helped them with was to stuff their pipeline full of new opportunities. And boy, did they give us a challenge. So when we distilled down in the strategy, like their target market, so we're allowed them to pick 3 target markets. And the first one was the US Navy. Now I'm sitting there thinking, US Navy is not on LinkedIn. Like who was their target market? It was captains, admirals, pilots, procurement officers within the US Navy. Now, one of the big learns through using LinkedIn Sales Navigator, we were able to put in keyword searches using Sales Navigator, and we were able to identify over 2,500 people in the US Navy that were target market that they could start to have conversations with. Now, over an 8-week period, they were able to connect, have great conversations using LinkedIn as a strategy. So we take them through a process. One of the key things there is to have that connection in the first message as a conversation. Don't sell. You know, imagine it's a network event. You're not going to sell to someone straight off the bat. So we taught them conversations, and conversations are the new leads. So as a result, $840,000 in their pipeline in 8 weeks.
Okay, that's great. So Paul, and I think Adrian, this hopefully will go some way to answering your question. Paul, would it be fair to say that with this navigation company that specialized in marine, the key is adaptation? In their case, they would go live to these conventions, to these exhibitions. They had to adapt. They did it electronically, and they've blown their pipeline out of the water.
Oh, look, they won't go back to traditional selling. So, you know, we've seen a big shift from traditional selling to virtual selling. And virtual selling offers a lot of cost benefits in terms of cost of sale coming right down, no travel time, more efficient, you know, just more effective process.
Great. Look, I see we've got more questions coming through. We will do as many as we can in the time that we've got, but for the moment, I'm sorry, people, we have to move on. But I promise you, if we get time, we'll look to more of these questions. But look, love your participation. It's great to see an engaged audience. All right, so one other area of adaptation is the actual skill base, isn't it, team? I mean, we're talking about, you talked about Paul, Pete, you talked about consultative selling. We're going to take a deeper dive into that. We promised Karen that we would do that. Also, this business of account management, I wonder how many of our viewers have realized that account retention might possibly be one of their #1 strategies. Paul?
Yeah, look, absolutely. It's 5 times more cost effective to sell to your existing clients. Really important, you just mentioned retention, is to have a retention strategy, because, you know, as your competitors get desperate and they want to grow market share, they're going to try to start lowballing you and take your clients with them. So make sure you've got a good retention strategy, but furthermore, make sure you have a strategy that is centered around farming and growing your share of wallet with your existing clients.
That's great. Thanks, Paul. And Pete, I'll draw a comment from you before we move on. Negotiation, would it be fair to say that in times of financial crisis, buyers will start to try to save money by taking it out on us? What do you think?
Oh, definitely. And we've even been seeing that with some of our existing clients, you know, asking for discounts, you know, contract renewal. I think the people that you're selling into are under pressure from the finance people, the finance directors. I think you've got to, salespeople and business owners have got to get better at negotiating, and be aware that if you're not selling consultatively and you're not selling the value, it'll be easy for the people you're selling to negotiate with you and to look for discounts.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think this is a key skill. I think the other thing, just coming back to what you were saying before about, you know, adapting and using technology, negotiating screen to screen is completely different to negotiating face to face.
It is, and there are do's and there are don'ts of selling screen to screen. There's etiquettes, there's technical hacks, there's use of other technologies such as electronic proposals, DocuSign, you name it. There's a lot that can be done to really smooth out this whole adaptation. Exactly. Yeah, indeed. Thanks, people. We must move on. But look, so far we've looked at changing our strategy with regard to our process, with regard to our use of tech, such as screen to screen and use of LinkedIn, but also our raw sales skill, our raw sales methodology, which of course is being featured on this slide. But you know what? What are some of the lessons that we can learn from previous recessions? Firstly, I want to talk about research. Now, fortunately, SalesStar is very, very well researched. And as a matter of fact, just to highlight some of the research that does go on within SalesStar, we've got 3 research projects, arguably some of the greatest research projects in the history of selling. And I'll start with the first one there. And then Pete, I wonder if I could get you to make a comment on the second one. And Paul, I wonder if I can get you to make a comment on the third one. The first one is by an English gentleman by the name of Professor Neil Rackham. Now, interestingly, Neil Rackham is a professor of behavioral psychology. So he understands human behavior. He led an entire research team a few decades ago. And with that research team, they called on about 35,000 customers over a 12-year period. Now, I'm sure you will agree that's a big enough sample to be scientific as opposed to anecdotal. Now, a lot of us have heard about this research if we've been around for a while, and it resulted in a book called SPIN. SPIN is an acronym that stands for situation, problem, implication, needs, payoff. And that was an early prototype of consultative selling. So we talked about consultative selling before, and that's why SPIN selling, even though it's a little bit, it's a few decades old now, it still should be mandatory reading for all salespeople, highly recommended, but that's just the start. Paul, you're right in up to your, Pete, you're right in up to your neck there with Objective Management Group research, aren't you? And this is a bigger sample size.
Yeah, this is, so OMG, or Objective Management Group, have evaluated over the past 30 years, I think over 29,000 companies globally, evaluated over 2 million salespeople. And I think one of the things that the research from OMG tells us is that mindset has a massive impact on a salesperson's ability to sell. So Michael Edwards has actually asked a great question around, skills of salespeople, but is mindset becoming even more important? So if you look at the 5 competencies that make up the will to sell competencies, so if you look at things like outlook, responsibility, and the opposite of responsibility is excuse making. If you look at desire, the commitment to get better, the commitment to do the hard yards, all those things have a massive impact on a salesperson's ability to sell consultatively, qualify, and even close deals. So I think that piece of research is really invaluable when you're trying to understand, what's getting in the way of you getting better as a salesperson.
Yeah, I agree, Pete. Skill is only part of the equation, isn't it? I mean, I can teach everybody on here 100 ways to close, but if they're too timid to ask the question because they're afraid they'll get offside with the customer, all that know-how is worth nothing. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the competencies under sales DNA is the need for approval. And salespeople who have a high need for approval, the research shows that has a massive impact on their ability to sell consultatively, ask the tough questions, and they're more likely to discount. So yeah, all those things get in the way of you being able to implement skill.
Yeah, wow. Now we are psychologists as well as sales managers. Paul, this next one by the Corporate Executive Board. Now this one is fascinating because this took place as a result of the last financial crisis, the global financial crisis that began in 2008. Can you briefly give us a summary on that one?
There's a lot we can learn from this because it's probably one of the latest research projects, even though it's 10 years, 12 years old. The executive board looked around in the height of the global financial crisis, and they saw there were still pockets of salespeople being super successful, and that's despite what industry they came from. So they evaluated over 6,000 salespeople from every major industry around the globe, and what they discovered was there's a certain type of salesperson that actually thrives in tough economic conditions. That was a challenger salesperson. If you haven't read the book, another good read. It's called The Challenger Salesperson. But what they also noted was that buyers significantly bought differently, and they wanted to see more value that in a salesperson, more value that a salesperson could bring to the table. And it really highlighted the move away from relationship selling, because relationship sellers were really only 7% of top performers compared to consultative sellers at 53%.
Yeah, interesting, Paul. I read that same research myself, and one of the fascinating things that I found in that research is that this is in the middle of a financial crisis, and yet only 9% of buying decisions were based solely on price. That really surprised me. And 51% of buying decisions were based on the sales experience. Now, there's a big lesson in that.
Yes, there is indeed, Alex. I'm sure we'll highlight that as we go through this presentation.
So yeah, let's just build on that, Paul. Now, we learned a lot from the last global financial crisis about buyer behavior, because buyer behavior changed, didn't it? So Paul, if I could get you to start, and then Pete, if I could get you to draw a comment from you as we go through some of the points here.
Yeah, look, well, first and foremost, our observations in a recession, and you're starting to see that happen now, is companies start to downsize. So the people we're used to selling to, if they're still there, they're generally doing the job of 2 to 3 people. So therefore, they're busier than they've ever been. So I don't know if you're having troubles getting hold of the right person now. Chances are they're, in crisis mode. They're also uber busy because they're doing other people's jobs. So tougher to get in front of them first and foremost. The other thing, I mentioned it earlier on, their budgets have contracted. So, decisions generally get escalated up, and also more decisions are based on a committee. So if you're used to selling to a certain level and to one person, you need to be able to be a accomplished seller selling to a committee and selling high up to a C level.
Thanks,
all of that certainly prolongs the sales cycle. Sorry, Alex, go.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So we've got to get control of the process, because this is going to happen again. It's probably, as you say, it's starting to happen again now. History repeats itself as it did with the GFC. Pete, there's a comment there about how people actually prefer to make safe decisions. And I see my stats were slightly out. I said 51, it's actually 53%. Do you want to make a comment on that?
Yeah, your comment there about 53% based on the sales experience. I think this is related back to the right at the start of the sales journey with a prospect, or even where you're wanting to retain an existing account. I think it's about differentiating yourself. So I know we talk a lot about the sales experience that some salespeople give, which is about show up and throw, which I know you're going to come on to in a few slides' time. But I think it's really important. You can only differentiate yourself, not necessarily through your product, but the experience you give during the sales journey or the buying process, and being prepared to challenge your customer and your clients and give them that. So that actually you don't become the salesperson, but you become the trusted advisor.
The trusted advisor. Yes, that's good. Let's take a deeper dive into that, guys. Time is against us.
Yeah, I'd say, Alex, have a think about what the definition of consultative selling is.
Go ahead.
Well, it's in our world, it's enhancement of client profit. So, if you're a consultative seller or a challenger type of salesperson, you're helping clients, you're helping them give insights on how they can make money, save money, be more compliant, or avoid and navigate maybe issues or challenges in the future. So consultative selling, as I mentioned before, enhancement of client profits, and there's two ways you do that if you're a consultative seller. You help clients become more profitable or improve their revenue, or contain costs. And in particular, I'll wrap this up in terms of the sales experience. It's in ways the buyer weren't thinking about. So in ways they haven't been thinking about. So bringing some insights into their business.
Well, Paul, that talks really nicely to the slide. The previous slide, we talked about buyer behavior, but now you've really done a nice segue into this slide, which is seller behavior, and how seller behavior had to adapt during the last GFC. Pete, anything you want to add to that before we move on?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting, the top point there about closing. Actually, if you're better at consultative selling and you're better at qualifying, then closing will happen actually more naturally. And so one of the reasons we see deals stuck, and people say, well, actually it's in decision making, or I'm waiting to close it, is because it hasn't been qualified properly earlier on in the sales process. And it's also what they haven't done is consultatively sold and created the value. So I think you are going to see deals stuck, not because of skill, but because of the mindset, because the salespeople don't have the mindset to implement that skill.
Great. Okay, gentlemen, we must move forward, but hopefully that gives us good coverage of buyer behavior and seller behavior during the global financial crisis. Got a lot of implications for what we're looking at right now with the current COVID situation. All right, Kath, let's do another poll. I want to get to an idea of how our viewers are feeling right now. And the question is, if you had to choose just one thing to be good at, what would it be? You can't choose all of them, okay? You've got to choose one. All right, so is it going to be to manage better the psychological weaknesses, to get good at retaining and growing accounts, to get good at negotiation, learn how to posture, in other words, learn how to articulate your value propositions so that buyers will want to see you, get good at the consultative selling process. And one thing that Professor Rackham tells us is get good at disqualifying so you spend more time on the winnable deals. Okay, so if you had to pick one, and you can only pick one, what would your top priority be? Kath, are the answers coming in?
Yeah, we've got 8 out of 30 that have voted so far, 36% going up.
Okay, that's great, and we want to get probably about 3/4. So hopefully, that maybe they're having some trouble deciding which one to choose. There, I'd be interested in seeing which one winds up being the dominant one that people vote for. How are those percentages looking now?
Yeah, so in the lead, we've got get good at disqualifying opportunities ruthlessly at 29%.
Okay, let's close those polls in 5 seconds. 4, 3. And let's close those polls. Thanks, Kath. Would you like to share the results with us, please? There it is. So do you want to read those out for us, please, Kath?
Yeah, sure. So we have 22% are better manage psychological weakness. 6% get good at retaining and growing accounts. No 0% get good at negotiation. So nobody's voted for that one. Learn how to posture to see more buyers and prospects at 17%. Get good at consultative selling process 28%. So that's joint leader with get good at disqualifying opportunities ruthless also at 28%.
Okay, look, pretty even spread across the board there. Pete, I'm going to draw one comment from you and then we're going to move forward. Any analysis there?
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to why nobody answers to get good at negotiation. So we've obviously got lots of people on the call who probably believe they're really good at negotiating. But I think for me, the one that the highlight is getting great at disqualifying opportunities ruthlessly. I think the better you get at disqualifying opportunities, the better your pipeline is and the biggest impact on results, because you don't waste your time with tire kickers.
Okay, that's great. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. The advice from all of the thought leaders is to get really ruthless on disqualification. Thanks for that. We must move on now. Kath, if we could please close that poll. It'd be good just to get the opinion of everybody. Pretty good spread. I was a little bit surprised at the negotiation result as well. Okay, so people, if you want to know how to deal with the COVID economy, if you want to know how to rock the recovery, you're looking at the formula right now. And I invite each and every one of you to take a screenshot. Feel free, okay? Because this is the secret sauce. This is the magic formula to rocking this recovery. And today we're going to just, for the remainder of this hour, we're going to just focus on one aspect of these 9 steps in this high performance pathway, and that is your sales process. All right, so if you want to know about a little bit more about that, you can actually download this from the Sales Star website. Pete, you can supply that to your customers as well, can't you?
Yeah, we can, yes.
Okay, indeed. That's if you didn't get a screenshot. Okay, but look, I want to introduce you on the subject of sales process to the worst salesperson in the world and to the best salesperson in the world. Rob Money on the left and Penny Wright on the right. No points for guessing which is the best salesperson in the world and which is the worst salesperson in the world. So what I want to do is I want to play for you a video of Rob Money. Now, Rob lacks process. Check it out, and it's painful. Be ready.
Hi Neil, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How's your day been?
Good, thank you. Yeah, very busy. A lot going on here. Can I get you a coffee?
No, I'm good for coffee, thanks, but I know how you feel. We're actually under the pump as well at the moment. Flat out. Got the wife telling me I've got to get work done around the house, but I'm spending my whole days at the office. You catch the ball game on the weekend?
I didn't know. I take it you did.
Oh, love the game. Love the game. So myself and a group of friends are down at the local, watching the game, making stack loads of noise. Surprised we get kicked out on the weekend. We were making that much noise, but what a game. Let me tell you about the game. So you had players just really come into some great form this year. And then they hit that home run where you should have heard the bar go off. Cheering, yelling, absolute killer move. Just as well too, because I had $50 on the game.
So, Rob, what can I do for you?
Glad you asked actually, Neil. Wanted to show you our product brochure here, which just goes through a lot of the products and services that the company can offer. As you can see, really good quality products. So none of this cheap third world rubbish. Most of it's made in Germany or Switzerland. Very comprehensive range. This particular model here.
So how much is it?
That model there, $250 a unit. But if you take 10 or more, I can do you a really good deal.
To be honest, it's a very similar price to our existing supply, and we're not really looking to change.
Where does he go now? Now, look, before any of you, the viewers, Pete, before you tell me what's a Kiwi doing on the cast, let me point out there that all of the buyers in this cast are British. I just want to make a note of that. And the only tosser on the cast is a Kiwi. All right. So I just wanted to make a note of that. Okay. Is he a tosser? Paul O'Donoghue, how much of a tosser is he?
Well, look, he's not an effective salesperson. Does that make him a tosser? Well, I don't know. But, you can certainly approve his go-to-market strategy. So, let's unpack what he did wrong.
Okay, well, let's do that. And to do that, we'll use the analogy of a baseball diamond. Now, Paul and Pete, you're very, very familiar with this. We know the game of baseball, don't we? If the batter gets a chance, he or she makes a play on first base. And we liken that to the greeting in the sales process. Bearing in mind, we're talking about sales process at the moment. Get him another chance, he or she will run to the second base, which is the consultative interview. We liken that to. Third base, we liken to the solution. And home base, we liken that to conversion or closing. Paul, what was the problem with Rob Money? Did he follow this process like a game of baseball?
Well, he missed the key step. First and foremost, he spent too much time on base one greeting, too much time building rapport. You could see the buyer was looking out the window. He was disengaged. And then he had to control the meeting and say, so Rob, what can you do for me? Some words to that effect. So Rob had nowhere to go, really. Did he ask any questions? Did he ask about the needs? Did he ask any consultative questions? No, he missed out base two altogether. He got so excited, he ran to the solution, which is a strategy we call show up and throw up. Tell me about your products. Here's about us, and here's our features, here's our benefits. Are you interested? So, he didn't get the prospect engaged, doesn't know what the customers or the prospect's needs or wants are, or, there's no understanding of what he's currently buying and why he would change. So therefore,
Indeed.
He's not in a position to sell on value.
So we're talking about process. In a word, he is not following process. Would you agree, people?
He's not following process. Yeah. And you've actually got to, if you want to speed up your process, write this down. Slow it down on base two. So consultative selling is the epicenter of selling. We've got to slow down the process on base two to speed up the process.
Okay, that's right. I want to talk to that a bit further there, Paul. Pete, maybe I can get some comment from you here. Now, look, we talked about Objective Management Group. This finding is from a sample, I think it was over 2,000 people in this particular sample. And there we've got 5 competencies there across the bottom of the infographic there. We've got hunting, consultative selling, qualifying, presenting, closing. What are those percentages in red, Pete?
Well, I mean, what this graph shows, if you look at the sample size here, is that if this was, say, a typical sales force, this sales force is quite good at actually hunting new opportunities. So they've got a competence level of 55%. But if you look along the graph to presenting, and just to confirm what Paul was saying, this is these are the type of salesperson who will get a lead, they'll ring them up, they'll get super excited, they'll go and see the lead, and now they'll do it screen to screen, but they'll jump straight to the solution or presenting the product. And then they'll get, as Rob did, they'll get involved in actually discussing price, and they'll try and do a deal. But
did you see how he got cut off there by Neil? And no wonder so he fell to 25% closing capability, didn't he?
Yeah, and what you've got here is that the salespeople in this survey here, they're not qualifying well, and they're not selling consultatively. So again, they're missing out really key stages in the sales process. All
right, so I want to address a question that Karen, I think, was it Karen? Karen had asked this question earlier on, and she was talking about closing, and both you, Pete, and Paul were saying you've got to get super good at consultative selling. And remember I said there's a why, and the why is this. Who remembers? It's that the why is that consultative selling creates buyer motivation. Take a look at that consultative selling at 25%. People say, can you help our salespeople to close more? Quite often we find that if we just increase the capability where it says consultative selling, the close will take care of itself. And here's why. It's because the consultative selling creates buyer motivation. And that is the number one reason why a deal will stall. And that is because there's insufficient buyer motivation. I want to take a look at a video now of creation of buyer motivation. Remember I introduced the best salesperson in the world? That was Penny Wright. Okay, now people, this video is a little bit longer and it's a stark contrast to Rob Money, who had no process. Watch as she uses some really searching questions with her customer to create the motivation that she needs to progress this opportunity. All right, let's watch.
So, who currently protects your building from fire?
That's never right, fire protection.
So, what do you like about their service?
The pricing's good, which is important, and when we call them, they come out promptly, which is excellent.
Of course it is, but whenever you call them, how often do you call them?
Quite a few times, really. It's almost once a month.
Why is that?
Well, we sometimes have false alarms. Actually, we've had quite a few this year.
How many times would you say they've been out with these false activations?
I can tell you exactly. 10.
Over the last year?
Yep.
So when this happens, is there an evacuation of just one part of the complex? Or
No, the whole, all of us are outside.
A full evacuation?
No matter what the weather, could be, 200 of us waiting for the fire brigade to give us the all clear.
So am I to understand that if there's a full evacuation, there's also a full shutdown?
Yeah, that's right.
And how much downtime is caused by this?
Well, the thing is with the fire brigade, they can normally give us the all clear within 20 minutes or so. But the real problem is, the recommissioning the system, and that can take, 2 hours, sometimes more.
So what is the cost of this downtime?
I'd say it's about $20,000. Yes, $20,000 if I take everything into account.
Per hour?
Yeah.
So that is a really high figure. Why is it so high?
Well, a large part of the cost is the food wastage, because under regulations we have to discard the food, of course.
So, and am I right in thinking the fire department fines you for these false activations as well?
Yeah, well, as you'll know, we get the first 3, which are free, but then after that, every false alarm after that is $1,000.
So that's an additional $7,000 per year.
Yeah. Yep.
And your incumbent, do they have to attend each evacuation? You said they had to come out and reset.
Yep, they do.
Right, so that's what we call reactive maintenance. How much do they charge for this each time?
Let me check. $500 for each call out.
Okay, so that's another $5,000 per year.
Yeah.
So just to make sure that I fully understand the situation, you're incurring 20 hours of unnecessary downtime per year at a cost of $20,000 per hour. That equates to $400,000.
Yep.
Then there's $7,000 in fines plus $5,000 in reactive maintenance. So that totals $412,000 per annum. Is that correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's an awful lot of money now that we're breaking it down.
How do you feel about such a high cost to your business?
Off, actually.
How motivated are you to resolve this?
Well, very motivated, but how can you guarantee that it wouldn't happen with you as well?
Well, let me put it this way. What if we could cut back on these activations by at least 50%? Effectively, that's a saving of around $200,000 a year. Is that still a worthwhile saving?
Yes, it is, absolutely.
Okay. So would you like to explore the solution together?
I think I have to.
Great.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, what I forgot to mention is that this is a reenactment of an actual event that took place when a fire protection consultant and salesperson went and spoke to a COO of a major food manufacturing plant. This really happened. Okay, so Pete, would you say that Penny is recession ready?
Definitely. I mean, just compared to Rob, it's a lot more structured. She was asking great questions. She was taking the prospect through a series of situational questions. She was talking about the impact on him, and she was testing his motivation to go to the next stage. And what she did really well was she quantified, how much he was losing, the impact it was having, not just in terms of time, but in terms of monetary value as well. And that's why he was getting angry.
Yeah, indeed. I love the fact that it wasn't enough to find that $400,000 in downtime, but she kept twisting the knife by getting every other cost into the picture as well.
She
Paul,
was
oh, sorry, Pete, you finish off and I'll go to Paul.
she was really digging deep with him. You know,
She
like you
was
said,
digging-
she was just you know twisting the knife as you correctly pointed out. But again, you know, she was really in control of the situation, but she was very professional in the way that she handled it.
Yeah, indeed. So, Paul, would you say, we talked to Karen about getting a motivated buyer. Do you think she's got motivation there?
Look, I think it would be fair to say this buyer is really motivated. Did he get angry? He certainly got emotional, and 85% of decisions are based on emotion. So, and he got emotional because Penny stayed in the pocket. Like, this whole call was around base 2. Every single question was around consultative selling. I like to call it a discovery meeting because the question she was asking was helping the prospect discover the problem, discover the size of the problem, discover the impact of it. So every time he answered it, he was owning the problem and he was getting more emotional, especially when she started to monetize the size of the problem. And, it wasn't until that point where he was like, this is a lot of money, I want to fix it, and I'm really motivated.
Yeah. Who would have guessed that she sold fire protection? We're talking about sprinklers, alarms, and smoke detectors. Not one mention of a sprinkler, not one mention of an alarm or a smoke detector. It was all about the problem. And Paul, I love the phrase that you used. She monetized the problem. Pete, you made reference to that as well.
Well, there's a key learning. She sold the problem. She didn't sell the product. And that is a key learning. If you want to sell on value and you want to sell really effectively right now, sell the problem, don't sell your product.
Indeed it is. All right, so people, we looked at the 9-step high performance pathway, and we just took a slightly closer look at Penny following process. As you can see, Paul mentioned just a second ago, she spent a lot of time on second base, whereas Rob didn't go there at all. So would we do similarly? All right, now we want to do a survey now and just once again get the pulse of the viewers there. So Penny's recession ready, but the question is, are you? So we're interested in knowing exactly what you guys want. We want to know what the market wants. That's you. Select which of the following you would like to know more about, because if you pick one thing or another, that governs what we talk to you about. Okay, so as you can see, number 1, you want to develop an effective sales plan. Number 2, develop an effective sales process. Penny was following process. Thirdly, enhance your sales capabilities overall. Assess your sales team using objective management group diagnostic tools. Digital transformation. Do you want to learn more about how to get leads digitally through LinkedIn and selling screen to screen? And look, guys, if you want to pick all of the above, we've got provision for that as well. Kath, are the answers coming into the survey? We'd really like to know what the viewers want from us.
Yeah, sure. So we're up to 27% of the audience has voted.
Okay, viewers, this is your chance to have your voice. All right, to be heard. Tell us what you want and we will go to where the need is in the future. So keep on voting there. Kath, what are the percentages looking like now, please?
Yeah, so 53% are all of the above, but interestingly, digital sales transformation is leading as well, 50%. So that's really high. People are obviously needing some extra skills.
Okay, let's close that survey in 5 seconds and you can show everybody the results that you were just looking to. So that's 5, 4, 3, and let's close that survey. And would you like to are you able to show the result there at all, Kath?
I can show the results. Would you like me to share the results, Alex?
Yeah, we weren't going to, but I wouldn't mind taking a look at it.
Okay, let's have a look.
Okay, so look, there's a good spread there. There's some people who got greedy. They said all of the above. Interestingly, Paul and Pete, a good number of them talked about digital sales transformation as well, didn't they?
Yeah, I think that's indicative of the conversations we're having with clients and prospects at the moment. I think companies want to transform the way they sell. They want to learn how to sell screen to screen. And as Paul puts it, they want to get involved in the biggest online party that's going on LinkedIn at the moment. And LinkedIn is a great way to engage with prospects, engage with customers. You can use it for client retention. You can get yourself out there as a thought leader. So in a way, it doesn't come as a surprise, that result, but I've been interested in Paul's insights as well.
Paul?
Yeah, look, I think it's one of those, I guess it's one of those things where we see a massive shift right now in selling. We've seen a big move from traditional selling to virtual selling. So, the companies that are forward thinking and thinking about learning more around digital sales transformation are the ones that are going to come out of this a lot faster and grow market share. And what I would say is that, digital sales transformation is about meeting your perfect avatar where they start buying, and 90% of B2B deals are the buyer's journey starts online, and 57% of those start from LinkedIn. So learning about LinkedIn and influencing your ideal future client is key and paramount. Using screen to screen enables a lot of our clients to grow in different markets and significantly bring those costs down. So yeah, look, I'm a fan. No real surprises there.
Yeah, no surprises for me. Locally in the Southern Hemisphere, we're getting a ton of inquiry on that subject. So I'm not surprised that our UK friends feel the same way. Thanks, Kath. If we could just close that down now. And our final slide, what's coming up on Rock the Recovery, ladies and gentlemen. So we've got a series of webinars that are coming up once a fortnight. So I hope that you join us fortnightly, and that you got some good value out of today, some good insights on what you need to do to navigate the challenges that lie before us in the COVID economy. Coming up, mental health, big issue, especially during lockdown. Business owners are worried. They're having sleepless nights. Salespeople are under pressure. People have been under lockdown dealing with isolation. Big issue. We'll be talking about that and ways to deal with that. Developing an effective sales process. Well, we talked about that just now. Take a deeper dive into that and what we can do to make sure it's a best practice process. Digital sales transformation. The majority of you voted to know more about that. Here it comes. It's coming your way. Same with screen-to-screen selling, identifying and retaining your top talent, and also a sales strategy to plan in a tough economic climate. I'd like to thank my panelists for joining us today. Pete, for hosting this today and welcoming us Kiwis into the UK contingent of SalesStar. Kath, thank you so much for driving this whole thing to make it all possible and to make sure we didn't fall over our faces in the process. And to all of you who are logged on, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Was that a comment from Paul, was it?
No, Kath's got a comment. If you've got any more information, Kath, where do people reach out if they want to inquire about something or learn more?
Sure thing. So I've got my email address and mobile number in there. Also, if you didn't manage to get a screenshot of the 9-step pathway, let me know and I'll email that over. If you found anything interesting today and you want to book a meeting with us, there's a calendar link you can click on there as well. So please do reach out, and thanks again for joining.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, Pete.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody for joining. Everybody who's registered will automatically register for the next series. If you've got any questions following the webinar, then please reach out to Kath and myself. More than happy to answer them. Thanks so much for joining. Sorry, apologise, it's gone a bit longer, but we had some great questions that were answered, that were asked during it. So we invested a bit more time in answering those questions. So thanks so much, guys, and see you in a couple of weeks' time.
See you in a couple of weeks' time. Final word, if you haven't copied the contact details out of the chat box, do it right now before we log off. Great to see you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time, and we'll help you to further rock this recovery. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
One last word from me. Make sure that you've got this in your calendar on a regular basis for the next 8 webinars every other week. Anyway, here's to your success. Namaste.
Yeah.